Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Evening, folks. Thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining me here in the studio is Steve Wildman Monrodis and Robbie Rip Rains. He comes sneaking in at the last second while the credits are rolling. So we're happy Robbie's here with us. Robbie, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. After drinking out of the fire hose all day.
Did you boys have a good time?
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, if anybody is kind of on the fence about taking that class or think about, you need to take that class, because as a 27-year veteran of law enforcement, I learned stuff today that I had no clue or didn't think about. And I mean, Steve, you know what I'm talking about, just things that you just wouldn't think about. And I thought I was pretty good at putting tourniquet on until Doc showed us a video. I think the first time I put it on, it was like 20 seconds. I'm like, 20 seconds, that's pretty good. He showed us a video and it was like 11 seconds and the guy was boop out. I'm like, yeah, I need to practice a little bit. So if anybody's on the fence about it, take the class.
Yeah, we certify every year, and we have a stop the bleed class. Not near as compelling as Doc's is. I wish we would use Doc, but we have to do this every year, and we have to get a tourniquet on ourselves in 15 seconds, or we can't be passed. And,
and one of the little evolutions after we watched that video, he's like, all right, you saw what happened to the guy's dominant hand. Oh, he said, let's pretend that was his dominant hand. Because he, throughout the entire class, he'd be talking, all of a sudden he'd scream out, tourniquet left leg, tourniquet right arm. Most of the time you're working with both hands. But after this one, he's like, all right, take that tourniquet in your non-dominant hand, and you can't use your other hand. It's boogered. So, and that's a little eye-opening when you go to try to put that thing on and you can't use that other hand. You're thinking, what would I do in a situation like that if I couldn't use both hands? Because it's stuff you need to practice and need to work on.
That's why we say, folks, those kits, the life you save might be your own.
Yep.
Steve, you had a little excitement last night, I hear.
Yeah, apparently my upstairs neighbor, who's also a recreational pharmacist, was
amateur recreational pharmacist
and herbalist, was have a little party, and about 3 a.m. one of his clients / friends was banging on my door, 3:30 in the morning, trying to take the door down, because he was missing the party. And so Glock and I met him at the front door and asked if we could help him, and he decided we couldn't, and then backed his way up the stairs to the apartment above us. So
he beats on my door at 3 a.m. You can bet your ass I'm opening it with a gun in my hand too.
Well, it was funny. I told my wife, I'm like, lucky I didn't kill the son of a bitch. She's like, it's a little excessive to shoot somebody for knocking on your door. I'm like, I put 2 bullets in him and stick one of my spare scallywag knives into his hand and call the police. I keep an extra mini jack around for just such an occasion.
Well, you just have to hope the responding officers don't watch our show. Like, hey, isn't that a scallywag knife this guy's got?
That's going to be one of those ones that disappears from evidence because they like it.
No, cops don't do that stuff. What are you talking about?
No, of course not. Boys, I'm excited for the topic tonight. We're going to be talking, folks. We're going to be talking about Atlantis, the lost city or continent, if you're of that inclination, because I frankly think it was more than just a city. There's a lot of history, not just dating back to Plato. I mean, Plato was one that first ever mentioned Atlantis, and that would have been was it about 360 BC?
Something
when
like
he
that.
talked about Atlantis disappearing in a single night. That they were an advanced technology. They had a powerful navy, and there were a lot of suspects for who Atlantis might have been. But I think we're gonna have fun talking about them. But Steve, you just watched a show on them, didn't you?
Yeah, I've mentioned on the channel before that I tend to kind of get on YouTube and go down a rabbit hole, and one of the channels that I love watching, and they're not an affiliate, they're getting nothing from me mentioning this, and we're getting nothing from them, but I like the Y-Files, and just this week, I think it was Thursday, he um, released a video about these stone pillars that were found in this region in Turkey, and they're dated from about 12,000 BC, and yet they have evidence of complex metal tools being used on them. When 12,000 BC, big archaeology says we're in the Stone Age. Okay,
Yeah.
and the technology, as they worked their way through the layers of this technology, appeared almost overnight. And so they're like, who had it? And it was pretty interesting. And there's also evidence that right before these things were built, there was a massive flood that occurred, and then you don't see any of the advanced stuff after that. All the stone objects they found more modern than that are all just crude scrapings, as if they were literally blown to the Stone Age.
What we were talking about, before Robbie jumped in, there's evidence of the Great Flood, quote unquote, across multiple mythologies. You've got the Christian religion, you've got Sumerian. Every major religion has a flood mythology. Now, if what you were saying, if an event occurred at the end of the ice age that caused a global melt in the course of basically a single day, yeah, the water levels are going to rise, and some of them it's not going to recede.
We might be looking for Atlantis and not finding it because it's under 1,000 feet of mud.
Could be.
You figure you're going to be creating tsunami that are, a couple thousand feet high potentially, and it's like the one joke about tornadoes. It's not what was it? Ron White. He said it's not that the wind is blowing; it's what the wind is blowing that's the problem. Well, same thing with the water. It's basically just a big washing machine. It's going to scour everything into dust, and it's kind of hard to excavate 1,000 feet of mud.
Pretty much.
Especially when you don't know where to dig.
Well, I was watching a thing here not too long ago, and this isn't really anything to do with Atlantis, but it could, explain something similar. They found evidence of a mega tsunami that hit the East Coast that came as far inland as middle of Pennsylvania, and they estimate that water wave was close to a mile high when it hit the East Coast, and that was, I think, one like 30,000 years ago or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, there seems to be regular cycles of these.
A tremendous amount of water.
Yeah, we're seeing these things about every 8,200 years or so. And so it makes you wonder if it's something regular, like maybe we're passing through a meteor shower or a cometary belt or something like that kicks these little objects into our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was that meteor shower you were telling me about? You were talking about?
Oh, the Taurid meteor shower.
Yeah.
There about 10,000 years ago, there was a comet that they're now retroactively calling Encke, ENCKE, and about 10,000 years ago, it broke up, and it was about a 40-kilometer diameter object, and it basically broke up and turned into thousands of little comets, and so every year we go through that meteor shower or that belt of comet pieces, and it becomes the Taurid meteor shower. It runs between like October to December. In fact, it's going to peak on November 6th. So we're right in that, and that's when you see all those nice little fireball meteors. You look in the direction of the constellation Taurus, you see all these objects. A few years ago, 2013, you probably have heard of that Chelyabinsk meteor that everybody videoed coming down in Russia, and it burnt up in the air and blew out like 100,000 windows and all this other stuff. That was a Taurid object, and they're estimating that it wasn't very big at all. They're thinking like an object that is just a few tens of feet across, and it's the energy release was like 30 times what Hiroshima did. That's pretty ridiculous.
I was reading recently that supposedly satellite scans of Antarctica have shown a structure similar to what Plato described Atlantis to look like, a city with concentric rings.
Well, that's where was it pyrite or pyrite?
Piri Reis map.
But yeah, because I've heard plenty of people speculate that's possibly where Atlantis could be, is underneath Antarctica, because that's massive underneath there. And when we're talking the other day, Pangea, before Antarctica froze, basically. I mean, I think that's a strong possibility that it could be somewhere around that area or underneath Antarctica.
To me personally, and again, I don't claim to be any type of expert, but to me, that's the one that makes the most sense. Huh.
So Hooter Transport just kind of alluded to where you and I were going before the show, hitting Greenland 10 to 12,000 years ago, right at that end of the Younger Dryas, last ice age.
Mm-hmm. It's certain that theory certainly would explain a lot. Why some things that should not be were able to be done, yet we've not been able to find any example of technology. I mean, they found examples of technology in the Egyptian pyramids of primitive batteries.
Mm-hmm.
They made primitive batteries. What the hell did they need batteries for? But we've never found what the batteries powered. Well, we did find primitive batteries in the tombs.
Well, the 3 Giza pyramids, everybody's like, well, it's, they were made as a tomb. Okay, they haven't found a mummy in any of the 3 of them.
Right.
So what were they built for then? Yeah. And David, I'm going to butcher his name. Is it Bai? David Bai?
Bai.
Yeah. So yeah, you're correct. We go through that debris twice a year. You get the Torrids in the fall and the Perseid shower in March. So we get 2 opportunities every year to join the Stone Age.
It's really only a matter of time till something big actually gets through the atmosphere. I mean, I'm shocked it hasn't happened already. Well, it has happened, just in our distant past. The one that you were talking about that got filmed in Russia, I wouldn't call that a major strike because it didn't do a whole lot of damage. But you said the one that blew up over Tunguska was what? How big did you say it was?
Let me check again because I literally just clicked off that tab. Now the Tunguska object was not one of these objects. Tunguska happened on the 30th of June 1908, so it was not the right time frame to be one of these. The Tunguska object, let's see, they believe it was about 200 feet in diameter.
So a 200-foot diameter cometary fragment entered the upper atmosphere and detonated over Tunguska, Alaska, decimating hundreds of acres of permafrost, laying trees out like matchsticks, killed like 100,000 reindeer. It did massive damage, but the thing was, there wasn't really anybody living in that area. Just a big empty area of Siberia.
Well,
had that happened over a population center?
Yeah. Detonated 5 miles above the Earth's surface and did all that.
And you said it was what, like 80 times the size of the detonation that we did in Japan in World War II?
The Tunguska object would have been, yeah.
And that was an object 200 feet in diameter. Now, what if a cometary fragment bigger than that hits? What if it gets through? Or do we have the technology to stop something like that?
Well, we've been kind of dismissing the Chelyabinsk object because, not too many people were affected or whatever. Okay, it created a 30 kiloton blast.
Which is no small feat.
So, I apologize. I'm reading the wrong page here. It's a 500 kiloton blast, so 30 times the strength of Hiroshima.
That's a hell of a blast.
Yeah.
And it wasn't nuclear. It was just an atmospheric burst.
Yep. It was a 66-foot in diameter object, and it still injured 1,500 people. You know, and that was with this thing detonating, you know, miles off the, off the surface.
Yeah. What if it
And
had done that over New York or London
Yeah.
or, Sydney, Australia? You know, a major population center. How many people would that have killed? And we couldn't stop that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even know it was coming until it hit the atmosphere, and we heard the boom
Mhm.
because it came out of the direction of the sun. You know, it's like you would have those head-on collisions, and all you see is headlights. You know,
So
you don't
another
know what's
good
behind it.
strike like that, and we could lose more locations. That much like the way we lost Atlantis. I mean, we could lose the Hawaiian Islands, we could lose Iceland, we could lose Greenland. Any low-lying area that heck, if the ocean levels rose by as much as 60 feet, we'd lose most of Florida.
You know, people will be 10,000 years from now will be looking for the lost continent of Manhattan. You know?
Well, it's like that book series I told you about, DA, The Last Hunter.
Mhm.
He based all that off the premise of Atlantis. Well, it was somewhat Atlantis, but he kind of all the Roman demigods, the Norse demigods, and all that stuff. Basically, Atlantis were those men of renown, is what he called them. But they all got, when Atlantis went under, that's where they all lived, like in New Olympus and things like that. But it was a whole society. It went back to the Hollow Earth theory too, that they were all connected, and there was multiple. Because I just saw Marty say that Atlantis wasn't the only civilization that disappeared. Yeah, it was kind of
Lemuria.
it was kind
there
of
were
an
several.
interesting premise for the book that there's this whole underground civilization. It's not just one city. It's like it's where all the Greek and the Norse and the Roman and all these ancient civilizations that had, like they mentioned Thor and Odin and Wepwawet and Anubis and all these ancient Roman and Greek deities and demigods that we've grown up listening or hearing about. Every one of them supposedly was part of these ancient cultures and civilizations, which maybe would explain some of the stuff that we found that we don't know what in the world they were doing with it or what they had a use for.
Yeah, it's extremely compelling stuff to think about. I mean, how far off would that actually be?
Well, I mean, like you said, what did they power with a battery in ancient Egypt?
Right. They've never found anything that they've powered with it, but they have found the batteries. So what did they need a battery for?
Well, but and Doc said something in class today that was kind of sort of ties what we're talking about as far as the technology. They found remnants of tourniquets back in ancient Roman civilizations. How did they know about all this stuff?
Well, they said that during the Roman Empire, that the average Roman soldier in the Roman legion got medical care on the battlefield better than anything we've provided up until World War I.
Yeah. And they talk about Napoleon and credit him for bringing the mobile surgical army hospital, which would call that obviously then. But he was credited with bringing battlefield surgery and all that to the front lines. But you really don't hear anything talked about until the MASH units started. And
right.
So, but they knew about that stuff.
Well, in the Civil War, they knew that too. They had a much greater chance of a soldier surviving a wound if they were in close proximity to the doctors. So they set up medical tents just at the edge of the battlefield.
Yeah, but how did they know what this technology was? I mean, let's make a tourniquet. I mean, how do you in that with no or very limited knowledge of the body or how it works? How would you know to come up with something like that unless you learned it from a much more advanced civilization that suddenly was not there anymore?
Well, here's a big question for you. How much of that knowledge did we lose with the loss of the Library of Alexandria?
Probably a whole lot.
Probably would have been, I don't know, a century or more ahead of where we are had we not lost the accumulated knowledge at the Library of Alexandria.
Well,
And it might have explained a lot of these myths, though,
I'll
things
ask
that we
another question.
think. Shoot.
What's in the catacombs under the Vatican that we don't know that could answer some of these questions that we're sitting here asking?
Yeah, I really, really wish that some of these places that have these caches of ancient knowledge would share them. I mean, we're a civilization that is now coming to grips with the fact that we are being visited daily by alien species. Our government has admitted it. So if we can accept the fact that we know aliens are here and probably among us on a daily basis, well, how can we not accept this ancient knowledge? I mean, granted, it's probably going to challenge a lot of the things that we've accepted as truths over the years. And that may be why they've been, reluctant to release a lot of it, because some of it may change history. Some of it may change everything we look at in history.
Well, and how much of the stuff that seems to be fantastical, mythological now, is a remnant from a previous science. Like the Philosopher's Stone, for example. People were trying for hundreds of years to try to create gold from things like lead, and they were convinced they could do this. And then obviously they never figured it out. But then 1924, a Japanese scientist created gold from mercury. By bombarding it with neutrons, 1924. So this is, 20-ish years before the Manhattan Project split the atom. So, how much of this is fake? How much of it is just forgotten knowledge?
I want to thank Dark Waters for the super chat. That is awesome. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that so much.
Very much. We appreciate you.
Well, and it's that whole things like the pyramids, like you mentioned earlier, Steve, or the Great Wall of China, or all these things that that to us we're like, why did they do these things? Why? What was the purpose and all that stuff? It makes us ask those questions, but unless somebody decides they're going to, okay, well, this is stuff that needs to be known, we're probably never going to know in our lifetimes what the purpose of the pyramids were. What was the purpose of Stonehenge? What are the purposes of the statues on Easter Island?
Right.
Until somebody either makes it known and decides that we're worthy to know it, all we can do is speculate.
The thing is the Vatican, they shouldn't hesitate to release this information on prior civilizations, ones before ours, because we're finding more and more ruins all the time. I mean, look at the island of Bimini off the coast of the Bahamas. It's one of the northern islands of the Bahamas. The Bimini Road. They found a submerged road that leads off into deep water. There's lots of speculation on what it is. Is it a road? Was it part of a building? But the thing is it's completely submerged and it goes off into water way too deep for us to track.
Yeah. Some of the deepest waters on the planet are off the Bahamas, off the Cayman Islands.
You get off the continental shelf, boom, it plunges deep.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a similar structure off the coast of Japan that, it's just
that, and they think that was the remnants of some type of buildings or something like that.
Some kind of temple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marty says, what about obelisks? I think obelisks and the pyramids, I think those were part of a massive power generator. There had to have been something that purpose for these things. And, couple that with the fact that the Egyptians had battery technology that we don't know what it was for. And throw in on top of that the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be a massive generator. Got a super chat from General Dalton. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. He says the greatest loss to humanity was the burning of the Library of Alexandria, closest thing to the Library of Herculaneum. Yeah, losing the Library of Alexandria, God knows what we lost. But I have a feeling that more of that was saved than we know. I bet the Vatican has a great deal of that.
It's probably, we probably think that we lost 75 to 80% of it, which we probably only lost maybe 25 to 30% of it.
Antilio Pompanen says the battery was for gold plating. Well, it makes sense. It makes sense that they would use electricity for electroplating stuff, but surely that wasn't the only thing they used it for.
It'll make a nice directed energy weapon if you had enough current. I mean, Nikola Tesla was working on that in the 30s.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why when he died, the FBI disappeared all his research.
Yeah, when Tesla passed away, the FBI seized all of his notes, all of his notebooks, everything that was in his possession when he died, and immediately classified it. And it's still classified to this day because he had an innate understanding of something that we will probably never be allowed to know.
But just look at it from a layman's terms. Why does the FBI go and seize all the assets from he was a famous person. He was smart and all this kind of stuff. But to a normal, average, everyday person, does that not sound weird that the FBI would just go in and take all this stuff and classify it? If it doesn't, then you ain't paying attention.
Well, he was an inventor and he was batshit nuts. He had some major mental illness later in life, but it still was enough that,
but that doesn't explain why unless he was, public enemy number one, or, he was on some kind of watch list or something like that. It does not explain why the FBI would go do that.
Right. Leon Mohan said Julius Caesar was in Alexandria at the time of the fire. Well, then it makes perfect sense that, he would have taken as much as he could take. And the dude had a fleet at his disposal. So it would make complete sense that he would take as much as he could take to save it. Well, there's another comment from Delois Montgomery says, while I was laid up with a torn hamstring, I sure enjoyed reading. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
There's stuff linking Alexander with all kinds of, there's rumors, and I know that a lot of people are going to think the second Tomb Raider movie, The Cradle of Life, but there's plenty of other things that link out Alexander the Great with Pandora's box, and I think even what was it? There was another major artifact or some kind of supposed major artifact that nobody knows if it was really real or not. But he was linked with a lot of that stuff. I mean, look how much of the world he went over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what do we say? Stuff like that is not said and not speculated without some grain of truth to it.
There's even the weirdest of legends. There's something to it. This didn't just prop from somebody's imagination to start a campfire story. Some of these legends, there's some basis in reality.
Yeah.
Another one of the candidates for the possibility of Atlantis is Heraclion. Heraclion is a city. It was a Egyptian city that sank. It was near the mouth of the Nile. It was believed to be one of the cities of the gods, and it disappeared. Whether it was from rising waters or from natural erosion, but it sank, and they're only now finding pieces of Heraclion.
Yeah. Well, even Atlantis, we're starting to find some archaeological evidence that really points in that direction. In Plato's writings, he talks, and Plato the Elder does as well, talks about buildings and things being made out of this red metal that they called orichalcum. And for years, scientists are like, well, if it actually exists, what would it be? And they were theorizing that it could be some kind of a gold copper alloy. And just a few years ago, 2013, 2015, they found a shipwreck near Sicily that was filled with these coins that were stamped in a way that they, doesn't match any civilization that any numismatist, could track it to. And they're a gold copper alloy that we don't know how to make. So, makes you wonder.
Yeah. Another possible candidate is off the coast of Greece. It's a city, it's called Pavlo-Petri, and it was discovered in 1967. It was one of the oldest cities ever found submerged. They believe it's around 5,000 years old, and it's off the coast of Greece, which would fit in on why Plato would know the story. Him being from Greece, that could have been a story that was passed down through the generations. So, Pavlo-Petri is a good candidate for possibly being Atlantis. But the way things are looking, Atlantis may be more than one place. It may be a lot of places. Like I was saying, it could be a continent. It could have been an entire civilization.
I mean, I think you could kind of sit here for a couple of hours and just speculate on because Steve hit the nail on the head. There's so many. If you're going to say Atlantis is in the ocean, there are so many places that you will never. I say never. Eventually, maybe somebody would be able to make a craft that might be able to withstand that, as long as it ain't powered by an Xbox controller. Sorry, too soon.
But, yeah, a little rough, but we'll take it.
But it's true. And I mean, and that to me is part of all those years ago, they could make something like the pyramid, and us with all our technology and all our advancements, we can't create a submersible that can withstand the pressure just where the Titanic's at.
Well, we can, but you're not going to make it in somebody's garage out of.
Well, that's true, but
out of cheap materials.
But it's the point is that for all our technology and our advancements, there's still so much we can't do comparatively to what they could do with, as far as we know, zero technology,
right.
Hand tools.
Right.
Until
the ancient Egyptians.
Says, did you ever see the city under the ocean between Florida and Cuba? I'm not familiar with that one. That's one I'm going to have to look up. There's another possibility. Could Atlantis have been in the New World?
Yeah. I mean, well, if the Bimini Road means anything, it could be.
Yeah. The Bimini Road is one that I go back to that one. What the hell is that? It's deep enough that they can scuba to it, but then it trails off into water where they can't track it.
Right. Well, then, you were talking about the ancient Egyptians, this is a Bronze Age civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and they are doing things that we cannot do right now with hydraulic equipment. We cannot make the tolerances. These buildings were held together with no mortar.
Right.
It was just the perfection of the stone cuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous.
Leon Mohan says the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid is the exact dimensions to fit the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant could have been the power source that fueled the entire machine. Certainly interesting.
Well, several years ago, the Mythbusters made a replica of the Ark of the Covenant with the idea that it was a Baghdad battery, and it made enough voltage that it would zap you a little bit. Of course, then they rigged it up to a dry cell battery and zapped the shit out of Adam Savage, and that was kind of funny.
Yeah, he got mad at that one.
He was not pleased. Seraphim there just about blew his nuts off. But it still was making enough voltage though that it was sparking. When you touch it, it was like grabbing an electric fence. And that was with the Mythbusters spending an afternoon.
Right. Imagine if somebody had spent centuries perfecting this thing. So this thing might just be a portable reactor.
Well, it certainly would give it some value.
It would also explain why some people who have come in contact with it had symptoms that basically sound like radiation poisoning.
Yeah. It reminds me of that that thing a few years ago where those people in, was it Thailand? They got a hold of a decommissioned nuclear medicine machine, and they took the guts of it to a junkyard to try to scrap it, and they ended up breaking loose the cobalt 60 rod that was in there, and there was like 2 people died, and a whole bunch of others got radiation sickness, and this is from a little 1.5-inch piece of cobalt that was years past its half-life.
Well, we keep finding mysteries that we can't explain. Like throughout Europe, every civilization has built its road system on top of the previous civilizations. They have dug down deep enough where they're finding roads that were better quality than what we can make today.
Well, think about the Roman roads. Everybody gives them so much credit for building these roads that have existed for centuries now. They recently found a superhighway, in where the old Maya civilization was in Central America. And, this was better than the Roman roads. And these were Stone Age people, supposedly.
Right.
Or
how much technology, how much knowledge have we lost? What kind of major reset happened that we lost all this this information? And how far advanced would humanity be?
Yeah.
Well, it's like that analogy I used a couple months ago. When you start making copies of copies of copies of copies, the copies start degrading. So for as smart as we think we are, I think we're just a shell of what humanity used to be.
Keep thinking of the movie Multiplicity.
Yeah, exactly.
Where,
we're going to eat coffee.
Oh, see, yeah, great party, Steve. I like pizza. The copy of the copy of a copy.
As much as we like to think we're the pinnacle of human intellect, some of these civilizations that the Mayans, the Romans, they were doing things that we're still having trouble doing now with far less technology.
Right.
So what happened?
And a lot of it is we become dependent on things like this to do our thinking.
Now, the Roman roads were awesome before we had engineers.
Well, I was thinking about, a lot of their technology was probably passed down. Well, if we go back to like those little structures in Turkey I was talking about, 10 to 12,000 years ago, this is before written language existed. So they were passing their knowledge from person to person, down the line. Right now, we rely on, virtual data to hold so much, the internet. Okay, what if we literally tomorrow are sent back to the Stone Age? We would lose absolutely everything because your iPhone's not going to tell you how to do it anymore. Your PC is not going to have a record of it anymore.
Can't get on YouTube and watch a video on how to.
Yeah, the most important skills are going to be how to get food, how to keep yourself warm, and how to build a shelter.
Yep.
Yeah. If you don't...
Another sunken city is off the coast of India. It's called Dwarka. It was the city of the gods. It's another city that's just gone.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned India because, some of the stories about Atlantis indicate there was a sister civilization called Lemuria that was sometime ally, sometime, rival of Atlantis. It was located in the Indian Ocean, allegedly. We may have Atlantis and Bimini and, Lemuria off the coast of India.
And I still don't want to rule out Antarctica. Because we're still learning so much about Antarctica, and satellite photos have shown gigantic shapes that can only be pyramids. I mean, you look at them; mountains don't form at right angles. This thing has 4 sides. That's actually a set of structures that's multiple in one area. They all have 4 sides. They're pyramids. You look at them, even though they're covered in ice, you can say that's a clear lines of a pyramid, and that's under the ice in Antarctica. There was also the shape of that city. They believe could possibly. It's very much like the city of the city that Plato described as Atlantis. What is under the ice?
And correct me if I'm wrong, you can't just go into Antarctica and start exploring because it's locked down, right? Pretty much.
Right. That's what I was about to say. I think Nona Boss was heading there too. Yeah, there's a no-fly zone,
Yeah.
and
Why?
if you try to use Google Earth, a lot of it's mosaiced out. Why would Google Earth, not let us see that? We're going to see penguins screwing. I mean, what?
Right.
What's the concern?
I mean, it may not be Atlantis that's under Antarctica, but there's something there that we're not supposed to see.
Very much so.
As long as there's not giant 6-foot penguins, that's all I care about.
And
I've read too much Lovecraft.
Guys like us are just not allowed to go there. We would never be able to go there without a government backing us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's an international committee that has to approve these expeditions because no one country owns Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost like a
sovereign nation.
Right.
Yeah, basically it's but
like,
the people that approve the visits.
It's protected by all governments. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
One government's allowed to monopolize it.
That's not eminent domain. There's a term for that. I think it's where you were going with that, Steve, but I can't
think of the term either.
I can't word.
3D Havoc asked if we'd heard about the pyramids that were found in where was it at? In Bosnia. I did watch a documentary on those. And the reason why most people don't realize they're pyramids is they're basically covered with dirt and vegetation. But when you look at them with LiDAR, they're like, that's a man-made structure, and they're massive. They're on the scale with the Great Pyramids. And these are being found all over the world. Some of the ones that were found in the jungles of Mexico are just massive structures like Chichen Itza. How did they build these massive structures with Stone Age technology?
Yeah.
And you can't just say, well, they used millions of slaves. Well, maybe they did, but they also had to precision cut every one of those stones because they fit together without mortar, and you can't slip a piece of paper between them.
Right.
Hey, you guys want to run down the rabbit hole even deeper?
Sure.
Have
I like rabbit holes.
Have you looked at a copy of the Piri Reis map?
Only the one that you put up that time when we started talking about it.
On the edges of the map are drawn figures of creatures that look like Bigfoot and Dogman. They're on the Piri Reis map.
Awesome.
I think that would be what we would call in the law enforcement field, DA, as a clue.
That's a clue. The Piri Reis map, when you look at that, and I've only been able to find like scaled down copies where you can't really super enhance it. I want to find a really good quality copy of it. But all the ones I've been able to find are pretty much low res copies. But even looking at these low res copies, I see things on there like the Dogman figures. William Nighthawk pointed those out to me. He's like, "What do you make of this?" and sent me an image. I'm like, "That looks like a Dogman." He goes, "That's from the Piri Reis map." I'm like, "Holy crap!" There's Bigfoot type creatures on there. There's dragons on it.
Think about what we talked about all the old sea maps that we talked about one time, where they've got all these different types of sea creatures drawn. Where we said, well, maybe that's, they saw something that looked like this in this area. So this area, you got to watch out for something like this.
Right.
Instead of it just being adorned as decoration or something like that. This is telling you where we saw something that looked like this, and we encountered something like this over here. I mean, I don't think they just put those creatures on there just for decoration. I mean, just like I said, it goes back to the Inca stones. How are you going to know what to draw and it looked exactly like what we know as a Stegosaurus or a Triceratops if you haven't seen it? When it's 4,000 years old. Same thing with these maps. If you hadn't seen something that looks like what we know is, or what we would call a sea serpent, how are you going to know to draw that unless you saw it?
Casey Calloway said, "No, the Radio Vault says, how do you spell that map? It's actually Piri Reis. It's Piri, and second word Reis. Piri Reis.
Was it a PYRI? Yeah.
PIRI. Reis, the Piri Reis map.
So I want to check that out.
I mean, just some of the images you can find on Google Images. You can click on some of those pictures and look at the images of the Piri Reis map and see things on there that just really kind of mind blowing. And those are very low resolution version pictures. I've got to get a hold of a book or something that's got a much better view of that. I think we could do a whole show just on the Piri Reis map. Nathan Finn says, when was this drawn? In early 1500s? That's when they think it might have been drawn, but they think it was a copy of a much earlier map. They don't know how old the original map was. And here's the weird thing about the Piri Reis map. They didn't know what it was when they first discovered it. But the United States Navy in 1972 did sonar soundings of the ice on Antarctica. And they came back and they said, well, it looks like it, but we think the map is wrong. They went back and resounded certain areas and found out the map was right and they were wrong. The Piri Reis map is a well documented and perfect example of the coastline of Antarctica without ice.
Yeah.
That's why maybe Antarctica wasn't Atlantis, but it was something. I mean,
there's something there.
Yeah, there's just too much now that we can attribute to, okay, they're trying to keep us out of there. That, I mean, if it was nothing but a hunk of ice out there, why would they even care? Because, like I said, it doesn't belong to any one nation. And
Hitler was very interested in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why does it have to be protected by all nations if it's just a hunk of ice, basically?
Well, they believe that Hitler had bases in Antarctica, sub bases.
Oh. And he was into a lot of that occult knowledge.
Oh yeah. He was looking for the Spear of Destiny, and he was looking for the Holy Grail. He was looking for things like Thor's hammer, like Mjolnir. I mean, he was any kind of
the Ark of the Covenant.
Any kind of biblical or any of these kind of supernatural type weapons. I think anything that could give him an edge, he was looking for him. He had a whole division that's all they were. If people watch like Captain America: The First Avenger and think, oh, that's made up. And granted, Hydra was mythological as far as that part of it, but he really did have a division that was going and looking for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because that line that the Red Skull makes when he's about to find the Tesseract, he says, "And the Fuhrer digs for trinkets in the desert." That was true, because he was wholeheartedly looking for the Spear of Destiny, because it said clearly, whoever possesses this, their army shall not fall in battle, or some iteration of that. And he was really looking for stuff like that.
I found a place on Etsy that sells copies of the Piri Reis map. You can get it as big as 59 inches by 98 inches. It's $600, but you can get a massive copy of it. I'm looking at the smaller versions. You can get an 8x12 for $21, but you're not going to get a whole lot of detail off of that. You'd need one at least, I don't know, 36 by 48, somebody in that, a good size one. I'll see if I can find one for purchase.
I think there needs to be one of those framed and hung on the wall at the Pub and Grub.
Oh heck yeah, yeah. Probably an original copy. That might have to show up in a book. Marglin's tacking it up all the wall, and Clark's cringing like, that's an original, right?
Oh God, yeah, tacking it with actual tacks.
Put that in a glass case, you idiot.
I use double-sided tape, boss. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's a Margolin thing to do. Very much so.
Toombs is right with me. He's just about to say that. I would love to know all the stuff that's on the walls in there by the end of the if you ever decide to end the series, what would we be finding on the walls?
Oh my God, there'd be some, by the time I'm done with the series, there's going to be so much weird crap on the wall of Steve's Pub and Grub. There's going to be like government agencies showing up going, we're taking that, and we're taking that, and we're taking that.
I was going to say, if Steve retires, for the second time, the FBI is going to swoop in and take everything that was on his walls.
Yeah, his entire collection is going to be seized by top men.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hunt up a copy of the Piri Reis map.
I think you're right. I think we could do a whole episode on that.
Oh, I agree.
ED Testament. I use Gorilla Tape, boss.
Yeah. He's over there like using his teeth to tear off pieces of Gorilla Tape.
Oh. How funny.
Yeah, the some of the things that are hand drawn on the Piri Reis map are just astounding. I mean, there are dogmen-like creatures, they're Bigfoot creatures. So, what other things are down there that they don't want us to know about, and why are they keeping us out of there? Is it Atlantis? Is it something worse?
Well, the premise of that book, it was like there were not just these ancient civilizations that were down there. I mean, there were dinosaurs down there. But there were also things. There were places where these underground lakes would lead back out to the surface. So you would have these pods of sea lions that were in and out between the underground and the top side, or whatever you want to call it. But there was basically he even went so far as to say that the Garden of Eden was down there.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's something that a lot of people speculated that, well, it's over here, it's in Syria, it's in Jordan, it's in it's at where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers come together. Nobody really ever knows.
Derek Buckle says, could these ancient areas have sources of power that could cause the issues with navigation, like the Bermuda Triangle? Yeah, very well could. I mean, we don't know what kind of interference that would cause.
Well, like you and I were talking before the show, there has been some allegations that the Tunguska thing wasn't a meteor at all. That Nikola Tesla was trying to impress Admiral Byrd and miscalculated his target, and ended up hitting Siberia with some kind of directed energy, something or other.
And even that's not that far fetched.
Well, when you look at the if you draw a line from Wardenclyffe through the North Pole, if you keep going, it ends up in about Tunguska.
Which is very, very suspect, to say the least, because we don't know what Tesla could do. I mean, the Philadelphia experiment was based on Tesla's designs, and I know they tried that again. My uncle Owen, who passed away like 7 or 8 years ago, he was stationed on Enterprise, the aircraft carrier. And he said that they were trying what they called invisibility to radar tests. And this was in the early 60s. He said they brought Werner von Braun on the Enterprise, and he was there when it happened.
Didn't you say there was some correlation between your uncle and the Enterprise and the movie, The Final Countdown?
He believed that the movie The Final Countdown was based on what happened to Enterprise. He wouldn't talk about it. He said, there's not really a lot I can tell you about. He said, but I was there when they brought Werner von Braun on board. He said, but I can't tell you about the incident itself. He was still, very much took his oath seriously.
That's rather interesting. When when the Enterprise was decommissioned, it did not end up being a museum, did it? It ended up getting scrapped, whatever.
Well, the original ship, the Eldridge from the Philadelphia experiment, they didn't decommission it either. It disappeared. And they found it about 10 years ago in a scrapyard in Greece. Yeah. Weird that they would just show up halfway around the world.
Yeah.
And that was a destroyer.
Yeah, not a tiny boat.
Right.
No. I mean,
yeah. Go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, stuff like that, and that lends to what we always say about, we see these things in these movies, and it's like, oh yeah, this is fiction and whatever, but the truth is oftentimes stranger than fiction, and I might have been me and you talking about this, DA. We're talking about that movie, Eagle Eye or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years ago with Will Smith or Enemy of the State. That's when it was.
Yeah, Enemy of the State.
Where they were doing all this facial recognition and, following him with all reading the paper over his shoulder and all that stuff. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's science fiction stuff.
No, it is not.
Nope.
David By said
nowhere
still stuck in the walls on the Eldridge. No, I would say that ship was completely sanitized before it disappeared. If there were men stuck in the bulkheads, they were cut out and replaced. Yeah, I know from years ago that the spy satellites we had in the late 80s were capable of reading newspapers in people's hands.
Well,
and that was in the 80s.
Okay, the security cameras in my hospital can read somebody's cell phone. Mm-hmm. My hospital, who spends no money on anything that ain't broken.
That's a fact.
You have to upgrade 3 classes of technology to hit jury rigged.
How technology is linked today. I was sitting in my office at work on Monday, and I ordered some more hats for the leather patches. Went to this website, found them, didn't like them there, so I found them on Amazon for a little bit cheaper. I come home, was watching YouTube, and all of a sudden, now I'm on my phone 20 miles away. I come home, turn on YouTube, never seen this before in my life. There's an ad that pops up for that exact same website that I used in one of the ads. I'm like,
yeah.
Tell me they ain't spying on your phones and stuff.
I've had ads pop up like when on my phone when I was searching, on like scrolling on Facebook. I've had ads popped up for stuff I hadn't talked about, just stuff I'd thought about. Like, I wonder, whatever this book or this item, and then it pops up like 30 minutes later in as a suggested ad, and I had not voiced it at all.
That's interesting.
You put this to your ear and it makes a connection, apparently.
Well, I was just thinking, I have we're aside from my wife's gaming computer, we're pretty much an Apple household, and we have one of those home pods in our living room. And we were talking after Andrew went to bed one night about Christmas presents, and my wife and I both got ads pop up on our phones about things we discussed, things that we had never searched yet. And I thought it was rather interesting. I was talking about having a range day with my friend the other day, and all of a sudden I started getting all these ads for CCW holsters. So, yeah.
Yeah, the things that they're doing with technology now is astounding. But the real question is, like we were saying, had we not lost everything in the Library of Alexandria, how much farther along would that technology be now? And here's another question for you that'll make you go, hmm. If this is the technology they're allowing us to have access to, what have they kept in reserve? What are we not allowed to know about?
Yeah, Star Trek probably isn't too far off.
Yeah. Well, I was watching a video on YouTube today, and I hope somebody in the Air Force or a Navy pilot or hope to keep me honest here. I think the F-35 is a 5th generation fighter. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So we just got the F-35. The military has already confirmed flight testing of a 6th generation fighter. Like, it's been photographed. They've allowed it to be photographed. What are we working on that they allowed that to be, photographed? The SR-71 was declassified the day it flew from, Los Angeles to New York, and what it was, an hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, the Dark Star that they used in Top Gun Maverick, that was actually supposed to be the one that took the Blackbird's place before they decommissioned it. Yeah, but we're just now seeing something like that in a major movie. But that was back in what, the 80s, when they were gonna let that take over for the Blackbird.
Right.
Yeah, but we're just now in 2022, I think, or 21, when Top Gun Maverick come out, and they're supposedly just now working on it. And that plane that they used, that was almost, I want to say they said it was 85% representative of what that plane would have actually looked like.
Well, it was enough that it freaked out the People's Republic of China, and the Navy was watching very carefully what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
And the Navy was like, you take this too far, you don't get the F-18 to finish this movie. So it makes you wonder.
My point with that is,
right,
if that was in that movie and that was so technologically advanced and all this stuff, to your point, Steve, what do they really have out there? Probably 5 or 6 steps ahead of that already.
I was about to say, if we say we have, okay, if this is what we're using, and then we acknowledge that we're 1 step ahead of that publicly, there has to be at least another order of magnitude or 2. There just has to be. I mean, otherwise, if you're only staying 1 step ahead, you're giving your enemies.
Well, it's that whole
intelligence.
It's that whole make your enemies play checkers while you're playing chess.
Right.
Now, what kind of technology you think that if Atlantis did exist like we're thinking, what type of technology you think they might have had that we lost? Because some of the stories about their tech is just fantastical. Could they have had, things like, renewable energy and stuff like this?
That's the premise that they went with in the first Aquaman movie, that they had all this technologically advanced renewable or energy that is basically free energy that they didn't have to, but they took it too far, or the king, whatever his name was, took it too far, and that's what caused that society to fall, and he pretty much caused it to fall into the ocean. But that's the steps that they were taking, is that they were so much more advanced than us, and that they had, basically had all these technological marvels, but weren't responsible with it, and that's why the price they had to pay for it.
Casey Calloway says, the man that ran Skunk Works before he died said, we now have the technology to take E.T. home. Doesn't surprise me. Not in the slightest.
Well, we're not that far from wormhole tech at this point. I was reading an article today. They were talking about, making matter out of just neutrons, basically atomic number 0. And they did some computer simulations and said that under the right conditions with the right amount of energy, it would form an Einstein boson condensate. which basically is the material that a wormhole is made out of.
Right.
And they're like, well, this would be really, really cool. Unfortunately, the radiation it would put out is, several orders of magnitude, greater than what the sun's putting out. So it would kill you before you got a chance to go through it. But I'm like, we're talking wormholes and we don't have warp drive yet. Be interesting.
Dr. 45-120 Sharp Rothstein says the Aurora is rumored to have crashed. RAF Boscombe down in Wiltshire on the 26th of September 1994. That doesn't surprise me. I think that thing went into production and it's so classified they don't even admit it exists.
Okay. So the 26th of September 1994, I was using a cell phone that zipped into a bag in my car.
But think about when the flying wing, when it finally was, okay, this is our bomber, whatever designation that was, like it's B something, I can't remember, but it was the flying wings, what everybody called it. Think back and think about some of the UFO sightings, how that plane was described or how that craft was described. Some of those descriptions looked an awful lot like that flying wing.
That'd be Two Spirit.
Yep. Corey Cole says the Aurora blueprints are on Google Patents. Wow. E.D. Testerman says, was it the Spartans or some other Greek giant robot that used the sun as a laser, basically? Yeah, they were able to use focusing mirrors to use the sun, basically focus the sun as a beam weapon.
They called it the death beam or whatever, or the
death ray.
Yeah, they did it. They did several episodes on MythBusters about that. They never could get it to work 100% right, but they were using way different. And this is just like, I love the MythBusters, watched them, but they had a very, very high propensity to go and use the wrong stuff to try to recreate stuff. Just like the thing with Carlos Hathcock, I hate that episode because they didn't recreate what was actually done. They used modern scopes, which totally
a lot more lenses in them.
Yeah, but that, in my opinion, that totally, takes away any validation that they could say that this is false. And that's the same thing with the focusing mirrors that they tried to use for the death ray. If you're going to try to recreate something, you need to go as original as you possibly can. Otherwise, it's like DA said, there's no validation to it at all.
Right. I've got no reason to doubt that Hathcock made that shot.
No.
I don't care. It wasn't. I watched a lot of MythBusters too. I didn't always agree with them.
No.
Just because they couldn't do it doesn't mean somebody else couldn't either.
Well, it's just if you watched the episode on the square tires, where they did that. The whole deal is to do that on square tires. You have to set each tire has to be at an offset. If you set each tire flat, you're not going to be able to start it. But if you set like the two opposite corners, if you set them on the points, it's going to start. Because there was a YouTube video not long ago. Did it started up and drove fine, and it leveled out and everything was great. But if you start all four flat on a square, you're going to have a heck of a rough ride.
Yeah,
because they're going to be in sequence, and it's just going to constantly slap. So they were really smart guys, or are really smart guys, but sometimes you can be a little too smart for your own good. And there's
another thing with them is just the philosophy in which they're going everything. They are outspoken members of the skeptic movement. They refuse to acknowledge anything that you can't back up with hard science. Fair play. I'll give them that. But, if anything we've learned from this show is that sometimes you need to reach out a little bit past what science can tell you.
Right.
And, it's just the way it is.
Here's a crazy thought for you. You know, we've always speculated that it was the Roswell crash that gave us advanced technology, that it was downed alien spacecraft. But what if the reason they keep us off Antarctica is they're finding some of these Atlantis-like technologies that are basically driving everything we have today? What if
Well,
those were terrestrial technologies that we'd lost?
well, there was a big, if you go back to the Roswell thing, there was a tremendous spike in technology right about the time that happened. Almost overnight, we started getting things like Velcro
Mhm.
and transistors and all these other things. I'm like, hmm, how is it that you get these without the prototypes to show the progression there?
Right. I
Well,
mean,
and
you
we
know,
said it before on the show, the technological jump from prior to World War II to World War II from now, there was something that kicked that in the butt. And I mean, there's no way, considering where we went from, dawn of civilization, whatever you want to say, to into World War One. If you look at the stretch and how things, progressed, then you go from World War II to where we are now. Astronomical jump in how fast everything manifested and went up and was produced, and Velcro. How many times we said it? More computing power right here than in the computers that put us on the moon.
well,
Hmm.
Robbie, we were talking about technology going crazy right after World War II. Admiral Byrd's mission to Antarctica was in 1946
Yep.
Huh.
when
I'm
he
gonna
came
see
back
here.
and
It's all
said they were
Roswell.
intercepted by advanced aircraft.
Well, there's so much talk about like the Bermuda Triangle and things like that. There are so many places on this earth that are just shrouded in mystery. And we've talked about the veil being lifted, the veil being lifted, the veil being lifted, the veil being pierced, and all this stuff so many times. And we've used it on the cryptid side of things. But I think it holds true for some of this other stuff too, because it if you really start thinking about it, like what you just said, DA, I mean, it's astronomical in the jump in technology from here to here versus there prior. It just
And the mission to Commodore Byrd's mission to Antarctica, Operation High Jump, in 1946 was done with prop powered planes and the old coal fired Navy, and was not very long after that we started seeing advanced jets. We started seeing it, computer technology taking off. Maybe it wasn't Roswell that spurred that technological breakthrough. Maybe it was what Byrd found in Antarctica.
yeah, because I mean, look at the planes in World War One versus the planes in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was a big jump between. Uh, I don't even know what the American plane was. The equivalent of the Spitfire. There was a British plane, but what was the Mustang? P-51 Mustang?
Yeah,
Mustang was
that's the American
U.S.
equivalent. Yeah.
The
Okay,
Spitfire
a
was
big
the English
British.
version or
right.
British
So
version.
big,
Sorry.
you know, in the span of like 10 years, we went from a P-51 Mustang to an F4.
Right. Well, look from World War One to Vietnam. We went from a Sopwith Camel to an F4 Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is true. This is true.
So
I was thinking, what was the name of that fella that supposedly worked at Area 51, and he had all the maps and everything, and he knew all the stuff, and basically the media's decided the guy's nuts now. I can't think of the guy.
we were going to have him. We were supposed to have him on the show at one time, and nothing ever materialized. I know who you're talking about, though, but I can't think of
Well,
what his name was.
but why I brought it up is if you work for the government and you're trying to keep something from coming out, simply saying it doesn't exist, Babelsar, thank you, David, uh, you don't just say it doesn't exist. You're like, oh, do you have UFOs? Nope. Was that a UFO? Nope. But if you misdirect and discredit, then your secret's kept. Balbazar actually knew his information. Make him look like a nut job. And there's been many cases of them doing stuff like that. And then we find out later that, there's some truth to it.
Mm-hmm. Griff's been a channel member for 11 months. Dude, that is awesome. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Oh.
I just think that there's, and I go back to Easter Island and, Stonehenge and all these things that, from our entire lives, we're all three pretty close to the same age, that nobody has ever really, there's been plenty of speculation about what these things are, but nobody really knows what any of these things are for.
No. And with Stonehenge, we didn't even know how old the damn thing is.
Yeah.
Every time we figure out that we think we know what its age is, it's older than that.
Right.
And it's like originally they're like, oh, maybe it's 2,500 years old or whatever. And I think now the latest run is that it could be 10, 12,000 years old. Okay, what the hell were we building 10 to 12,000 years ago with this thing?
And like I said again, what was it for? I mean, you can look at the pyramids and you can speculate, okay, it was some type of building, whether it was a tomb, whether it was an FOB for lack of a better term, it's a building. So it was used to house something or something like that, more than likely, because it has an entrance that you can go into, or they have entrances. What the hell could Stonehenge possibly be? I mean, I know I've heard people speculate it's an astral or astrological calendar or a timepiece, but why, if it was, why don't we have anything else like that any other place in the world?
Right.
So
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I mean,
I just pulled up Antarctica on Google Maps. It won't let me look at all of it.
It picks a lot
that's
of.
What I'm saying.
And if you scroll along
out.
the coast of it, you're not seeing the actual coast of Antarctica. If you scroll along the coast of Antarctica on Google Maps, every other screen it repeats. There's a whited out section, like they've hidden something right next to a bay. And if you scroll over 2 screens, there it is again. It just continually repeats those same 2 frames. So Google Maps will not show you Antarctica at all.
It's interesting that we can see more about Area 51 on Google Maps than you can see Antarctica right now.
Well, I was working on the new book, working on Dark Frontiers, Cry of the Wendigo. And I wanted to find a spot where I thought, Declan Kane would still be in modern times. And I started looking for like remote places where people still work cattle ranches and work horse ranches and stuff. And I just randomly chose Babb, Montana. It's in the middle of nowhere, about 10 miles from the Canadian border. There's no major cities around. It is in the butt crack of nowhere. Just outside of Babb, Montana, there are 3 areas that are grayed out on Google Maps. I don't know what the hell's going on in Babb, Montana, but there are 3 large areas that are completely grayed out that you can't view.
It's nice to know that at least Clark can easily march into Canada again and get himself in the middle of an international incident.
Well, it wouldn't be the first, probably won't be the last. Thank you for the super chat, Casey Calloway. We appreciate it. It says we are a species with directed amnesia. You're probably right about that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we are a victim of our own groupthink is what's happening to us.
I think they've deliberately stopped teaching certain things so we would eventually forget about them.
I think it's rather interesting that when you started talking about the grayed out areas near Babb, Montana, your video started glitching.
Weird.
And it stopped as soon as you quit.
Somebody's listening.
Somebody's always listening, it seems like.
Yeah.
I'm already on a watch list. You guys are going to get my ass arrested.
Corey Cole says, aren't there a lot of uranium mines in Montana? I don't know. I know there's some in New Mexico. I knew
There
that
was a lot of
when I
missile
lived down
silos there too.
That's where
You know,
you
that's
got your
possible. That
necklace.
could be what it was.
That's
I
where you
didn't
got
think
your
about-
necklace from, wasn't it?
Yeah. And thank God my junior high science teacher knew what it was.
David Bai is asking the name of that site in Turkey. Let me get the name for you because I'm positive I cannot spell it correctly. So I'm going to pull up the actual site. Give me a quick second here.
We lost Steve.
He's trying to pull up a site and he just disappeared.
Just disappears.
And he just said we were going to get him arrested.
You know, that the more I think about that, the crazy, I know it sounds crazy, but the more crazy sense it makes that Admiral Byrd started bringing stuff back from Antarctica about the time we started really having major breakthroughs in technology.
But it's almost like that Master of the Skies' moment. That's so crazy it just might work. It's so freaking crazy that it just might be true. Because the crazier it sounds, it seems like the more plausible it is with with a lot of this stuff.
Well, you know, here's a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory for you from way back. What if the destruction of the Library of Alexandria was not accidental? What if it was intentional to keep certain knowledge out of people's hands?
Or what if it was like we talked about earlier? You know, what if Alexander the Great had all that stuff and then he did it? He was directed to do it and bring the rest of the stuff back.
Right.
To make it look like you just said, to make it look like all that stuff was lost.
And you know, and at that point it becomes one of those cases where the knowledge is just lost. No. What if it was only lost to certain people?
Think about how many insurance fraud scams go on throughout this country every day.
There he is. We thought the Men in Black got you.
Well, I'm wondering if they might have.
Loading. He ain't got back on yet.
Am I here? Can you see me?
Show him on the street.
I see you. I can hear you.
Oh, there he is. We thought Tommy Lee and Will had come and got you.
Well, I was beginning to think I had too, because all of a sudden you guys were gone. That place is called Göbekli Tepe. Goebekli, new word Tepe. And like I said, the Y-Files just did a video on it. If anybody wants to check out his channel.
Something we hadn't even really talked about when we're talking about all this stuff. Look at all the stuff Jesus just found in New Mexico.
Yeah, if that turns out to be a temple, it's a major archaeological find.
Yeah. And in New Mexico, right in our backyard.
Right just off the White Sands Missile Range.
And is it just me? Or are most all military bases built on or next to really, really weird things in the United States?
Well, you know, the government had its pick and choice of wherever it built national parks and military bases. I don't think it was a coincidence. I don't think they just picked them at random. They picked these locations for a reason. I mean, let's look at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I was stationed there when I went to basic training. You know, when you think about it, it's basically just a big school. They've got the MP school there. They've got sapper school there. They've got a lot of basic training done there. Why did they need 25,000 acres? They don't use it all. Most of it's just forest land. But they fenced off 25,000 acres
to hide the wild hunt.
And that's not even one of the biggest military bases. Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington's bigger than that. It's like 80,000 acres or even more.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you could get the sanitized answer of, well, that's for, you know, for growth and development, expansion, things like that. But that's not. 25,000, 80,000 acres. This is the U.S. government. They're not going to expand that much.
Right. Not in 100
But
years.
they're going to spend as least amount of money as they possibly can.
Right.
For stuff like
and
that.
by the time they even got close to that, some of the old buildings would be ready to be torn down. I mean, when I first showed up at reception, the barracks we stayed in had been there since World War II. Derek Buckle says the Lost Dutchman mine is supposedly near or in White Sands. I always heard that the Lost Dutchman mine was in the Superstition Mountains of Arizona.
And there you get the Superstition Mountains. That's a whole show right there of all the stuff that has gone on in that place.
Well, just like the Nahanni Valley up in Canada, there's a headless valley in the Superstitions where people go in and they find their bodies. They don't find the heads, they find the bodies.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I'm going to start looking like a crazy, the guy with aliens. We're going to have little maps all over my walls with red string connecting all these little push pins. It really looks like a lot of this stuff connects, especially when you look at the Piri Reis map and find Dogman and Bigfoot on it.
I think it does connect. I think there's a lot of this stuff that connects when you start really peeling back those layers and looking at different things. And like I said, Antarctica may not be Atlantis, but it may be another one of these lost civilizations.
Or part of the Atlantis network. I mean, Atlantis could have been a global network of civilizations.
And when you start looking at stuff like that, start thinking about the hollow earth theory that we've talked about, we're not just like the earth being a big honeycomb, but series of tunnels and lakes and underground rivers
massive
and things
caverns.
like that. Yeah, that are connected. I mean, look at the episode we did where we talked about how big the Mammoth Cave system is that goes from Rhode Island to New Mexico supposedly.
Right.
I mean,
well,
how far is it from Maine to New Mexico if you drive?
1,500 miles, give or take. But here's the thing, though. When talking about the hollow earth theory, if there are these massive interconnected underground cave systems, the deepest part of the ocean that we know of is what, 4 miles? The bottom of the Marianas Trench is somewhere in the ballpark of 4 miles
ish. Yeah.
The outer crust of the Earth itself is like 1,000 miles thick, and that's not getting down to the magma levels. The crust itself is like more than 1,000 miles thick. How many freaking caverns could be hidden in something that big? And how deep could they go? And how far could they connect?
A lot.
Yeah, we could have caverns that connect every continent without ever, running into the oceans, going under them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about that big borehole that the Russians made. They quit drilling it because they started hearing noises that concerned them.
The gateway to hell.
Yeah.
They thought that they heard the sounds of.
That's where they found
torture people in hell.
But that's where they found whatever that what was it, species, some kind of weird
desert 8462 or something like that.
Sounds like an SCP thing that from that game. We got all these weird, but it's. I mean, there was more than one person that actually said they saw this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the dots line up and you can connect them. I mean, and I don't mean that in a goofy conspiracy theory type way. I mean, honestly, if you start really looking into this stuff and look at, like go back to what we said at the beginning of the show, every major culture has a flood myth, legend, whatever you want to call it. They also have some type of Atlantis type missing civilization. Well, what if their Atlantis is not necessarily Atlantis? It's just one of these other continents or one of these other civilizations that we're talking about. Maybe we just assume that it's Atlantis because they're talking about a city that or a culture or a civilization that disappeared beneath the waves, and we just assume it's Atlantis. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's because maybe the entire civilization for the entire world was this advanced at one time, and something like the flood wiped all that out. I mean, if you believe in the Bible and read that, that's pretty much what it was. It wiped out everything except Noah and the animals that God commanded him to take. So if you got all these civilizations that are doing things they ain't supposed to be doing, or moving in directions they're not supposed to be doing, or for whatever reason this stuff happens, you've got all these advanced civilizations that if we just make an assumption that it's all talking about Atlantis, and it's not. It's talking about the entire civilization of the world. But that goes back to your theory about the crust of the earth being that thick. That's probably...
I just Googled it. I was incorrect about that. I misspoke. The crust is as much as 43 miles thick. That's still if the Marianas Trench, I think David By said it was 7 miles deep at the bottom of the Marianas. That's still, 35 miles deeper than the bottom of the ocean.
Now, I just had a thought, and I realize I'm not dressed appropriately for it, so I'm going to add to my wardrobe here first. So let's assume for a moment that Atlantis did exist, and that Atlantis was a ridiculously advanced civilization, maybe even more advanced than we are. If they were able to see the stars and could predict when a very cataclysmic asteroid or something would hit the Earth and basically wipe everything clean, where would they go?
Below ground. And it certainly lends a great deal of credence to our theory that Bigfoot and Dogman are probably subterranean.
Yeah. Like I said, just a thought, but it hit me, and I was like, huh. Yep. Yeah, Inky pointed out exactly what I was talking about, the Younger Dryas catastrophe. Yeah, they call it the cataclysm. And like I said, AJ on the Y
I think
files.
I dated her in high school.
I got a shot for that
her
once. Yeah, I got a shot. It kind of itched like herpes. But no, the AJ on the Y files did a really good bit on it. And once you get past the fact he's arguing with a CGI generated goldfish that sounds like a Brooklyn Jew, it's a really neat channel. And they do a lot about the Younger Dryas. And all these little legends and myths and tinfoil hat stuff. The Younger Dryas keeps coming back over and over and over again. That cataclysmic moment. It's almost like it's a hub of a lot of this mythology, and makes you wonder why.
Justin has a very good point. He says, "What if Atlantis was not a place, but the name of the Earth before one of the resets?"
Yeah. Well, I think
give that man a hat, tinfoil hat. He's right there with us now.
I think that's a good theory, just like any of the rest of the theories we have. But I think that kind of goes back to, if it was, then why isn't all these other civilizations that it's not translated into Atlantis. It's all different terminology. So I think these are, and there again, just my opinion, my theory on this. I think they're all different civilizations, just like Rome, Greece, Scandinavia. Take your pick. It's all the civilization of the Earth that all live on the Earth, but the Earth is still the Earth, and I think it's always been the Earth. It's just, I think that was the name of one of the civilizations.
Yeah.
The Radio Vault says maybe it was Babylon.
Well, Babylon did supposedly have a lot of very advanced things for their time, and
I thought Babylon was supposed to be where present day Baghdad is.
According to the Bible, yeah. And Mesopotamia is where modern day Iraq is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting that, I don't know, maybe I'm looking too far to try to find a pattern, but I didn't realize I was looking for one. But it is interesting how many things kind of go back to this Younger Dryas period. What is so significant about that one event? that it's stretched into every piece of human history. It's linking up all these little pieces of various disparate cultures, and all these really interesting stories. Somebody posted, I need a Huckleberry plushie.
Where they've got sunken cities around the world, and they're finding more like all the time. Places like the Bimini Wall, Heraclion, what was the Pavlopetri? They're finding these all over the world. Then the strange stuff they found in Antarctica. It makes me wonder if these really weren't all connected. What was it Jesus was saying, that the Toltecs, when you look at the Toltecs, they had examples in Toltec artwork. They had examples that corresponded to other civilizations, like the Chinese and the Egyptians and the Greeks. The Toltecs seem to have had contact with these people.
Yeah, because he pointed out about the cow statue.
Mm-hmm.
That was one culture, but then the way the structure was above it was indicative of another culture.
Right. Steve Corey Cole says, "Can you tell me how long it takes for human bones to fossilize?"
Yeah, I had to do a quick search here for that. About 10,000 years under ideal conditions. So, it kind of puts us in a time frame, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I still stand by, if this cataclysm did occur, there would have been a clean slate. All this archaeological evidence we're going to be looking for is going to be under thousands of feet of mud. It's just nothing's going to stand. Stone buildings doesn't make a difference. Anything on the surface of the earth is going to be gone. It's one of those world killer type of things. But it's interesting.
And just to build on what Steve said about how long it takes, it's not just the time of 10,000 years that it takes to fossilize something. It's also the immense pressure and being buried. It has to be buried quickly, and it has to be under immense pressure. And it may take that long, but it's not just something being buried for 10,000 years, because you wouldn't be able to explain fossilized trees if it was just the 10,000 years, because a tree is not going to sit there stuck down between multiple layers of strata and just not rot over 10,000 years. So you got to have those other,
the right minerals, the right oxygen level.
Basically, like you said, the right conditions. You have to have the right conditions for fossilization to occur.
Little Patty said she thinks that the Atlanteans were aliens, or at least an alien technology far beyond what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, that's completely possible. But it could just be that they were just so much more advanced than where we. And like you said, maybe Admiral Byrd did stumble onto something, and maybe that's where all that stuff came from. Because the jump from the end of World War II to now, that would put that within that time frame and be a really plausible explanation for some of that stuff, like Velcro and cell phones. And
well, I was just thinking about just for aliens to get here. If we're to assume the physics, I can't talk. If physics is right, and the speed of light is an absolute, even at the speed of light, you're looking at a 4-year journey to the nearest star.
Mm-hmm.
At roughly 10% the speed of light, which is about as fast as we realistically think we could get something to move, you're looking at like a several thousand-year journey. If they could do something else, wormhole technology, space bending technology, something like that, I mean, they would be so advanced, it would look to us like magic.
Right. Karen Polson says, or was Atlantis a ship that landed?
It's a possibility. There was an anime that kind of alluded to that a while back. It actually, the name of the series was Ulysses, and it did like a future telling of where Odysseus was basically a space traveler on some kind of a generational thing. It was really cool. You know, it was one of those 1980s anime, but it was good.
Yeah, I think no matter which one of these theories you prescribe to, which one of them you think, what it all boils down to is there was something or someone, some people, whether they be extraterrestrial or just be a very advanced human civilization, there's something that's being hidden from us.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world governments know what it is because why would you block Antarctica like you do if there wasn't something there? Because it's just a hunk of ice, as far as all us normal people know. It's just a barren ice wasteland. So why all the fuss about it?
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Why would you have every major culture have all these legends or stories of the flood and these civilizations disappearing and things like that if there wasn't something to all this? So no matter which theory you prescribe to, that doesn't really matter, because what matters is finding out what actually happened and what kind of like what Tucker and Dale says. It doesn't matter what happened. What matters is what looked like what happened, and what looked like what happened.
Yeah. Tunes kept me honest there. Ulysses 31. Thank you for that. I should have figured you would have known. I should have just reached out to you.
Toombs
Casey
knows
Calloway
all.
says, I just watched a study the other day. You can fossilize things in the proper conditions way faster. But very specific conditions would have to be met,
Yes.
I'm sure.
You have to have those conditions that have to be met. That's what I'll say. It's not just a time factor, or it has to be that perfect storm. Matter of fact, I think I do remember somebody talking about they fossilized an acorn in a couple of months because they had the perfect they recreated the perfect conditions. Now, I won't say it was a couple of months. It wasn't, but that's just one acorn that they just
sure.
I read something about fossils too that said out of all the animals that have existed, we're finding fossils for like 1 out of every several million because the conditions have to be just right to fossilize. Otherwise, they just decay away.
Yeah. Well, I had two thoughts kind of hit me as we were talking about this. People would argue that with the high level of technology we have right now, we are one bad decision away from, annihilating ourselves with a nuclear weapon. What if these civilizations existed and they just got so advanced they didn't have the wisdom to match their knowledge, and they, Darwin themselves. And then another thing just kind of hit me is I had a pastor one time that we were talking about, the second coming of Christ and all the events that haven't add up. I'm not going to get preachy, but he had said, and it always stuck with me, that if Jesus came back today, we would think he was an alien. He just kind of out of the blue. What about the reverse of that? What if this alien technology was so advanced that we attributed deity to it because we didn't, they're gods.
Right.
You might be able to explain your Norse gods, your Greek gods, and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. Well, you know what the saying is, any technology sufficiently advanced appears as magic to those who don't understand it. It'd be like going back to the 1600s and showing them a working cell phone.
Well, and a good thing to that is I watched a guy that did a video on what 50 person ranger platoon, how much that would have affected the Alamo.
Right.
And
it would have been
one-sided. He said just doing a typical loadout, not even really anything
heavy
major,
ordnance.
just nothing heavy ordnance, no vehicles, nothing, just a 50. I guess 50 would that be battalion strength, or would that be platoon strength?
Just slightly over company size.
Okay,
yeah,
so basically a ranger company of 50 would have decimated decimated
The entire Spanish army.
Which would have probably in turn rallied Texas and had Texas go in and take over Mexico, and pretty much the entire Mexico would be Texas, just for 50 minutes because of how much more advanced we are now with weapons versus what they were then. Because it was like
it's 125 years technology. That's it.
Because basically the gist of it was Santa Anna would never been able to get his cannons in range to even do anything before most of the sharpshooters and snipers in the Ranger Company would have been able to take them out.
Right.
And you start hearing, you're standing out there, and all of a sudden people just start dropping, and you hear the little after they drop, and that happens about 5 or 6 times. What do you think that army was probably going to do?
Get the hell back.
Right, because they just got smited by the finger of God.
Yeah. So, and that's that same thing. That's exactly what it would have been. Magic. It would have been, because what I think marksman range at that time was probably maybe 100 yards if you were lucky.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're talking, if you take present sniper technology now, you're talking close to a mile.
Yeah.
Or maybe even over, depending on what ammunition and what platform you're shooting it out of. So yeah, that would, like Steve said, that would appear to be magic. It would appear to be, like he said, you just got smited by the finger of God. So, but think about how simple of a concept that is, that we're just talking about with that. Oh, just going back in time. Same thing with, Final Countdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That one aircraft carrier would have totally decimated that entire world. Japanese fleet without even breaking a sweat.
Think about the Battle of Thermopylae Pass. The we are Sparta. Bit. Think about what one A-10 would have done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You send one A-10 up the pass.
One A-10, 3 passes tops.
Yep. One pass
the entire
fire
Persian army would have been routed.
Yeah.
Yeah. One pass with the gun and 2 passes with the stuff that's mounted under the wings. And how many men did Xerxes have? I mean, it was like 10,000 or something, or more. More than that. It was ridiculous.
The 10,000 was supposedly the immortals. That was their number, but there was probably bigger than that, because the way they've explained that is they all dressed exactly alike, and they were pretty much stacked up in a line. So when one went down, there was always another one. That's why they get the name the Immortals, is because you never knew who they were. You never knew their exact numbers, but supposedly it was 10,000. But the entire Persian army at that time was like upwards of 1 million, I think, wasn't it, DA?
I think so. It sounds right.
But even there, 300 Spartans and a couple hundred Greeks.
300.
So, at the start of the invasion, the Greeks had 7,000 men, led by Leonidas. The Persian army was estimated at 300,000 at the start of the engagement.
That's a hell of a lot of men to march against 7,000.
Yeah, and I don't know what they were down to by the time the 300 was left, but yeah, you could definitely take that out with a good JDAM and a few other things that the A-10s like to carry around with them.
Yeah. Margaret Dietz says, so here's a question. Why do you think alien craft are always seen right before or after a man-made disaster or nuclear? I don't know, maybe they're studying the effects, or maybe they, somehow use the radiation. I
don't know. My personal thought is it's morbid curiosity. If I had almost omnipotent technology, and this lesser civilization was going to do something, like let's say I went back in time and I wanted to watch the Battle of Thermopylae, I'd be at a safe distance going, let's see what these fuckers do now. It had Toombs is right there with me, observations. I think about that the one Star Trek film where they're observing the alien race behind the duck blind, so they don't violate the Prime Directive. There's some truth in that.
And think about the Men in Black, and I can't remember which one it was, where he opened the locker at the end of the movie.
And the whole civilization was in there.
Yeah, and he said, "Man, that's got to be sad. You know, living your whole life in a locker, not knowing kids, you still ain't learned anything." It opens it up, and they're actually in a locker because that's something to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
No.
But that goes that whole us thinking we're the center of the universe thing, you know.
Yeah, I'm picturing DA's British Museum guy. Oh, let's see what they do now.
Oh no! Let them behave. They couldn't possibly understand. You know, boys, this went down a rabbit hole I didn't expect it to. As the idea of possibly the advanced technology that we've experienced over the last 75 years coming from ancient technologies as opposed to being, you know, from Roswell or from aliens. That's a terrifying thought. It would make you wonder just how much power would have been in controlling the Library of Alexandria.
And I think what's even scarier than that is, you know, that thought is scary of what, you know, if that's what we got it. But the even scarier thought is what's still out there. What is our government or other governments hiding from us?
Right. What have we not seen yet?
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe the aliens were us all along. Maybe the advanced civilizations of Atlantis and some of the other ones that have disappeared, like Lemuria, maybe they were just a better version of our civilization before it fell.
Yeah.
With a better understanding of technology and physics.
Makes you wonder. Casey Keller made a good point. We go 100,000 years without a wheel, and then we go from 150 years from a cigarette lighter to a space shuttle.
Mm-hmm. He's got a very good point. Boys, this rabbit hole has gotten awful deep. We throw in the Piri Reis map, you know, Bigfoot and Dogman, hand drawn on the Piri Reis map, plus dragons and advanced technologies.
And the Black Knight satellite shut me down for a couple of seconds randomly and reconnected me. Yeah, there you go.
Eric Chesterman says, could Atlantis have been a race of giants? There's so much evidence of many different sizes of giants throughout our history, and they were more advanced than we were. Yeah, it could be. Radio Vault says 1903, the Wright brothers, 1969 on the moon.
Right.
And until you actually look at it that way, that's not a lot of time frame difference. No. It seems like when when you're out of your head and just not really thinking about it, but to see it written down 1903 to 1969, I mean, that's like
66 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. 66 years.
That's not much older than much older than we are right now.
No. Right. 66 years, and in 112 years, we're still using a 1911.
Makes you wonder what we've got that's better.
Well, Inky's mentioned the Anunnaki. That is a whole other rabbit hole. That would be a fun show to do.
That would be. We need to do that one too.
Although it would take all my self-control to not do the hecklefish bit. The listen, people. It's talking about everybody. Radio allegedly.
This has been an interesting topic, and it's something I think we can probably come back and do more on. I'm going to try to get a copy of the Piri Reis map, just plain and simple. I'm going to see if I can get a, even in book format where I can look at the map in much
non $600 version.
Yeah, non $600 version, exactly. I'm going to see if I can locate one. But I'm really intrigued by this. I think, we've only scratched the surface of this. I think there's a much deeper rabbit hole we're capable of going down. Edie Testament says, look at our time frame. We had Atari in less that 20 years, look what games we had evolved to. Yeah, go from Atari to, games that you almost look real now.
Well, you can even go back further than that.
Skyrim.
Look at Pong to Atari. Look at the leap from that to that. And all that's been within our. I remember when Pong came out. I know, dating myself. I know DA, Steve, you probably do too. But
I played it too.
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
Yep, I was about 8 or 9 playing the Atari 2600.
Yeah, and when the 2600 came out, that was like the greatest thing ever. And then go from the 2600 to the original Nintendo was like, and then the Super Nintendo. Then you got the PlayStation and then Sega Genesis and original Xbox and all. I mean, all that's been within a 40-year time span.
Yeah,
well, my parents just celebrated their golden wedding anniversary this past June, and for a wedding present, they got a Pong game. And I remember digging it out when I was a kid, playing with the NES and stuff at home, and hooking up the TV, and I thought it was just the coolest thing. So yeah, 1973, you could buy Pong.
I've got one of those emulators over there that looks just like this. It's a mini Super Nintendo, but it's got the Atari 2600 games on it. It's got the Nintendo games on it. It's got Super Nintendo games. It's got all these games on it that, so it's kind of weird to go back and play some of these games and just look at the progression of what they look like and think back when I was playing these games and remembering these games and thinking at the time when I was playing them, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. But now, playing like Bigfoot, like we played the other night, and, the Ark series and things like that, it freaking blows my mind to think about how this stuff. Because there's games now that you can't even tell that it's an actual. It looks like a real person, and sometimes with mocap, it really is a real person. I mean, Kevin McKidd from Dog Soldiers, he's in Call of Duty. He plays one of the characters in Call of Duty.
Little Patty want to know if we set a date yet to play Bigfoot again. Not yet, but that'll be coming soon.
I would love to be a fly on the wall watching y'all play that. That would have been funny as hell.
Well, Doc wasn't able to join us. You could have jumped in.
It's interesting stuff. I don't know. I guess I've been wearing my tinfoil hat too long, but I'm really struggling to think that we made all this technology advance without any help in that short period of time. It's just, I mean, even if you take into consideration Moore's law and some of this other stuff, I can't see it. And what makes even less sense to me is we're struggling now to put stuff on the moon. Okay, what happened? I fully believe that we were there. I'm not one of those. It was in a sound stage, but we're struggling to do that now. 50 years later. I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
I got a different theory about that, and again, it's just a theory. I don't think we're really struggling to go. I think they're telling us that they're struggling to go. I don't think they want to go back. I think they found something that they don't want to go back and mess with anymore. What that is, I don't know. But I just think there was something that they did not want to find or didn't want to go back and mess with again.
Right. I think there's a reason they didn't go back.
Yeah. And I think it's just easier to say, the space program is not what, we don't put as much money into it, and, it's cost effective and cost efficiency and da 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 da. And I don't think that's the real reason.
Well, there's a certain amount of the Apollo radio communications that have not been released to the public yet.
Yeah, right. Which one was it? Was it Apollo 11 that was that movie where it was? where they kind of went into that they found something on the dark side of the moon?
Yeah, when the first radio contact was reestablished, the first thing he said was, "Houston, there is a Santa Claus," and they've never explained what he meant by that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We had just abruptly stopped the program with Apollo 17. When I went down to Cape Canaveral, I got to go to NASA and check it out. The completed spacecraft for Apollo 18 and 19 were assembled. Okay, it seems to me that must have cost a shitload of money to put those together. Why don't we fly them?
Like I said, I think there's a reason. I don't think it's that, oh, we can't do it because it's with cost efficiency. BS. There's something.
Well, when it comes to NASA, why did NASA stop exploring the oceans in the 1950s?
Yeah.
We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the depths of our own oceans. And NASA was dedicated to exploring the oceans until I think it was like 1959.
Yep. And to this day, if anything is released from a space probe, it has to be digitally edited by NASA before it's released to the public.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can get live footage from the International Space Station, but if you notice, every once in a while it just goes off, and it doesn't come back on for a while.
It's like the footage from Mars, from the rover that's rolling around there now. Everything that we're getting back is Photoshop. Why are they Photoshopping it?
Right.
Are we needing them to beautify it for us?
I think it's because we're not allowed to see certain things.
Yeah. There's nothing to see here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Right. There is far more going on in the world than we will ever know, I'm afraid. And I think this whole thing with Atlantis and the Admiral Byrd mission to Antarctica, these are connected. I think these ancient technologies may explain why we suddenly started having massive leaps in technology after Admiral Byrd's mission. Could it be the alien technology we benefited from was our own? Was human
when
technology?
You talk about these societies, Atlantis, Lemuria, which Lovecraft loved to talk about, and then the continent of Mu.
Mm-hmm.
If Antarctica isn't Atlantis, maybe it's Mu.
Yeah. Or Lemuria. How far did the continent drift?
Well, and
every year the magnetic North Pole is shifting about 13 inches.
Mm-hmm.
That adds up eventually. Casey Calloway said, "The rabbit has fallen to its death, will never come back out of the hole." This does happen.
Right. And then we come back to the Piri Reis map. Antarctica without ice. A map from the 1500s that was made from copies of much older maps. How long was that really, how long ago was Antarctica clear of ice? It had to have been within the lifetime of one of those map makers.
Yeah.
So 13 inches times 500 years. Do a little quick math here. Okay, still not a whole heck of a lot. So in 500 years, the North Pole would shift by about 6,500 feet. So it's a little over a mile.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a whole heck of a lot. But over the much larger spans, that could be significant.
Inky says could have only been made with satellite technology. Not necessarily. We made accurate maps of the coastline of South America and North America simply by sailing along and thin hand drawing maps. They weren't super accurate, but they were accurate, and that's what they navigated with. But unless they were able to get images of Antarctica from orbit, they had to have sailed around it without ice on it.
Yeah.
There's no other alternatives.
And GPS is not the end all beat all. A few years ago, I went out to Hawaii, and I had a Garmin in my car, my rental car, and I was trying to find the Hard Rock Cafe in Waikiki. I ended up pulling up to the guard shack of Hickam Air Force Base. The gentleman with the M4 was not impressed that I was there. But I was following my GPS, and the GPS told me to drive to the base. It's not flawless.
Well, Annette and I were going down by Table Rock Lake, and we were using the GPS on my phone, and it told us to turn right to get to our destination. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. And Annette's like, why? I'm like, because that's a boat ramp, and we'll be in the lake.
Somebody just said, just an old fart to say Wikipedia has a Piri Reis map.
I will check that out. I want to get a copy to hang on my wall. I really do.
Seriously.
Well, boys, I think we've covered. It's over the 2-hour mark. I think we've pretty well covered this subject enough for one night. But I definitely want to revisit this. I want to dig more into the Piri Reis map. I'm also thinking we need to do another Hollow Earth show to really get into this, especially now that we've kind of started coming up with the possibility that Bigfoot, quote unquote, wood knocks. At least some of them could be tongue clicks used for echolocation.
Yeah, I think you guys. I think you guys hit on something with that. I don't think I was on that particular show, but I remember watching after the fact going, he's got a point.
Maybe we ought to hear a word from Little Doc before we start wrapping things up.
Well, I heard a lot of words from him today.
Well, we'll hear a recorded message from old Doc. Here he is.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And if you go to darkangelmedical.com, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. You can get some of the best med kits in the business. You can sign up for training classes on how to use them. And David By, who's in the audience, and Robbie can both tell you just how valuable those training classes can be.
And mention T-Bone in your order and get a rocker, which is totally badass. Kit. And what was it? Their Kit for Life guarantee. If you save a life, you let them know about the story.
For free.
If you use the kit to save any life, including your own, then you send back the unused portion of the kit to Doc at Dark Angel Medical, and he will replace everything that you've used in the kit free of charge. It's the Kit for Life guarantee. And that, as of today, 174, I think is what he said, saves. 174 awesome. Extra birthdays.
That's awesome. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag?
Yes, sir. Another one of our veteran-owned companies that we support here at DA Ex Machina. And if you've read the books, you've heard the Bounty, you've heard the Gunner's Mate, you've heard the Jolly Roger, the Privateer, the Mini Jack. You've heard all these, the Boarding Axe. You've heard all these knives mentioned in DA's books. We mention them because they're great quality blades. Craig is a veteran. It's a veteran-owned company. It's not one of those companies that's a big brand or a big box store company that you're just a number at. They make some of the best knives but they also have some of the best customer service you'll ever have. You know, Steve can attest to that. We tell that story all the time. That
Oh yeah, and
he
it's totally true.
He did not have to do and help Steve the way he did, but he did, and he made a customer for life.
Oh yeah. Well, for those who don't know the story, my very first Scallywag tactical knife was a privateer, and I was very proud of getting it. You know, unfortunately, my budget doesn't allow me to have a bounty or gunner's mate at this point, but I got my privateer, and I was pretty excited about it. And I was carrying it to work, and you know, as I've done with many cheap knives over the years, I went to pry a jam staple out of a stapler, and I hear this tick, and the last eighth of an inch of the knife fell off. It broke it. Being a knife idiot who's never owned a good knife, I didn't realize that D4 die steel, in addition to being extremely hard, is also brittle, and you don't pry things with it. And so I emailed Craig, and after a little bit of a dressing down, where he basically pointed out that I was a moron, justifiably, he said, "Send it back to me. We'll file it down. We'll put a new edge on it." Didn't cost me a dime, and I got the education, you know, as only a Navy SEAL could do for you. And I got the knife back. And like I said, customer for life. I bought 4 or 5 knives since then. Bought a privateer for my brother-in-law, and he thinks it's the greatest thing on the planet, and he collects knives. He's got the Kershaws. He's got the Spydercos. He's got the, I don't know enough about knives here, Robbie, keep me honest. But he's got all the high-end knives.
Yeah. Schrade, Spyderco, Kershaw,
Gerber.
Those are some of your bigger.
Yeah. And he carries the privateer to work every day. You know, that's his thing.
I carry the Kershaw every day, which is, it's not high end, but Kershaw's pretty high end. I mean, that's $65, $75 knife, depending on which model you get. And I had 2 of those, and I carried them every day. And my Jolly Roger, my Sailor Assisted Folder, and my Orca have replaced those. Because, like, you know, I like to say, this is my go to the shop knife and my sit on the computer table and show to y'all knife. If I'm going out working in the shop, this is the one that's with me. My Orca goes with me to work because it's a good EDC carry knife. It's got the serrated blade and the regular blade on it. And then my Sailor Assisted Folder, I got the nice pretty copper one. DA says that's my Sunday go to meeting knife when I dress up and go out of town, which is very rare, but that's, you know, when I want a nicer looking knife, that's the one I take with me. But they're all 3, you know. And speaking of that, you've seen a pic. Do you want to see your special gift, DA?
Yeah.
So you're saying you break up the Orca with your Old Spice, huh?
Yeah. Karen is in the audience, so this is DA's that he said he wanted.
That's awesome.
Turned out pretty good, I think.
Oh yeah.
The DA wanted the Dark Hunt or Dark Frontiers logo on one side and the Wild Hunt logo on the other side, and his new gunner's mate. So
that is so freaking cool. I can't wait to get that. That is going to be freaking awesome to have.
This is, you know, I've seen DA hold up his other one.
Thank you, Karen. But
to get this in your, y'all got a chance to get a knife like this. Crocodile Dundee pulled out his little Bowie knife, said that's a knife. BS. This is a knife.
How's that thing feel in your hand, man?
Oh my gosh. I feel like if I had this in my hand, I could go after somebody who had a freaking machine gun and take them down. This just makes you feel like, I mean, it's so comfortable, no matter which grip you hold on it. But it's got the key factor, and you people have heard me say this. I'm not scared of my gun. I'm terrified of this thing.
That thing will lop a limb off. Have you seen the video on Scallywag's YouTube page where Mike Donavito puts one of those through its paces?
I haven't seen that. I've seen some of their videos. I haven't seen that one.
They hung a whole pig, and Mike Donavito went up there with the gunner's mate and just attacked this thing. Started stabbing and slashing. He was cutting through multiple ribs just slashing through the rib cage.
As heavy
Well-
as it and well balanced as that knife is, that I totally 100% believe that. That is. Oh, don't worry, Griff. It's within reach. Trust me.
Well, before you joined the show, a couple of years ago, Robbie, DA was unboxing and demonstrating the nice edge on that. We nearly had to use one of Doc's kits. So,
Oh, no, yeah, we say that all the time. Me and Da are in an exclusive club because you weren't on the show that night, Steve. Where I was doing my little scallywag and I was doing, and it fell. And what did my dumb butt do? I tried to catch it.
Try to catch it.
well, it's funny you mentioned that.
I bled for the rest of the show.
A couple weeks ago,
That's
you
why
made
they're saying to be careful because there's no ouch pouch around.
you made a comment about cutting yourself, and you said it was a couple weeks ago. You said, like a dumbass, I tried to catch the knife. So I was at work the other day opening up a box on that mini jack, and it slipped out of my hand. And before I grabbed it, your words were in my head. I backed away and I just let it fall. It stuck point first, 3/4 of an inch in a ceramic tile.
You're welcome.
had to
I'm glad I
play-
saved you. I'm glad I saved you the same stuff that happened to me.
I had to play at both feet and use both hands to pull it out of the tile.
Well,
And this is a mini jack, 3-inch blade.
we were talking. We were in class today, and Doc was talking about, and he used my story. We got the knife for us. He said, "Now don't be stupid like Robbie, because you know how Doc is." And him and Ken just died laughing. I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." But he said, so we got on that kick. But he said that another buddy of his got a knife made by somebody, and he said the guy was like, "Well, how sharp you want it on a scale of 1 to 10?" The guy, it was a skinning knife, and he said, "Well, 10, obviously." And he said he's skinning the deer, blood got on his hands, and the knife, as he was going down, slipped out of his hand. He didn't try to catch it. He said, the doc said he had a blue jeans on and like thermal underwear underneath it. He said it was like in slow motion. He saw the knife flip, and he said the knife hit like blade down on his pants. And he said it was in slow motion. It's like he saw the blue jeans open up, the thermals open up, and then his skin open up. He was like,
"Ow!"
He said he went back.
Cut into your fascia.
Next time he went back to him, he said, "Maybe let's do a 7 instead of a 10." So,
Yep.
But that's how these scallywag knives are. They're probably on a 9.5 to a 10 rating on
The
and that freaking gunner's mate. That's
Robbie, the bounty is every bit as sharp as the gunner's mate.
that's even more scarier. To take a turn from Doc, that's more goodery even scarier.
Yeah, the bounty is that sharp.
Yep. Cut you long, deep, and continuous.
Long, deep, and continuous.
It would not take a lot of effort swinging a bounty to take off a limb.
No.
And I don't mean on a tree.
Well,
Take
I
off a
think
head with the damn thing.
you could almost take somebody's hand off at the wrist with the gunner's mate. And if the bounty is scaled up from that, yeah, I totally believe that.
Dude, Mike Donvito took the gunner's mate and went 18 inches into the carcass of a pig.
I believe
So
it.
that's going to take more than a hand. You need to watch that video of the gunner's mate on the Scallywag channel.
Yep.
It'll blow your mind. What?
Like I said,
Yeah,
I've
but
watched
Mike,
some of it.
well, now if you look up "badass" in the dictionary, you're
Picture
going to have a
Mike
picture
there.
of Mike Donvito right next to it. So, granted, when you put a knife in that guy's hand, he is surgically deadly. Far better than anything I could do with a knife. But just what he was able to do with that knife to show you what that thing is capable of. Oh my God, it's
You're gonna need
terrifying.
full dart kit to fix that shit.
Available at archeological.com.
There you go.
All right, DA, you going to tell us about Brock?
Sorry, I heard that like every 3 minutes a day in class, so it's just like among other things that I heard all day in class.
Steve, I thought I'd put you on the spot and let you talk about rock blades.
Well, sure. I've got to take a chance to show some love for my tactical midget. I'm really kind of jealous I didn't get a chance to meet Kim.
I haven't got a
Blades,
chance either yet. I'm looking forward to it.
So Brock Blades, the Scallywag tactical knives are amazing, and the Wild Hunt orders them in bulk. but they're still a mass-produced knife. So DA's Bounty or a gunner's mate looks just like Robbie's gunner's mate, which would look like my gunner's mate if I bought it. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're mass-produced.
That's DA's gunner's mate. That ain't mine.
Okay. Well, I know I sure as fuck don't
it's
have
just
one.
in my possession right now.
It's in my possession. But Brock's blades are a whole different situation. These are custom-made works of art. They have a few available on their website, but you can also give them an order of what you want. What you want the handle made out of, what blade you want. What is that one? Is that the skin do?
Yeah, that's a skin do.
Skin do. And what do you got there, Robbie?
Same thing. It's just a
different design of the skein do.
Okay. So
behind this
as you can see, different knives, but you got same knife.
Yep. The story behind this one, we've got. You remember me telling you that Chief has got the bagpipe band from the Chicago PD is coming.
Yeah.
This is Ken's show skein do. So I'm gonna take that up there and show it to them when they come up and see if any of them want it. So no, it's in mine. So I read your lips and so I was like, no, this ain't mine. I'm just doing visual aid so people can see a different version of it.
Yeah, beautiful knife. But
yes.
If you want the blade, hard of a particular metal, you want the handle to be a certain substance. He could do that stuff. And the order, if you put in the code cryptid 10 on any blades you see on their website, you get bless you, DA. You get 10% off your order. I understand if you mention in the comments on a custom knife, they'll also give you the same discount. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. If there's a knife that you don't see on there that you won't mention it, hold on there, and he'll give you the same discount.
And Doc's got his street weasel, or as we like to call it, Doc's Claymore. They're a knife, they're a work of art, they're a badass tool when you need it. As near as I can tell from the interactions here on the chat, Ken's a pretty good guy.
When he wants to be.
When he wants to be. Yeah.
This is true story. In class day, Doc has us go through and introduce ourselves. Well, of course, the way it was sitting, I'm sitting at the end of this table and Ken's sitting right here. So we're sitting like here and here, and Doc was like, we were already going back and forth at each other. And Ken's like, or Doc was like, if you hear any back and forth between these two idiots and me, he said, we've known each other forever. It's just, all this kind of stuff. So we get around, everybody introduces herself, gets to me. Then, of course, Ken's the next one. He goes, my name's Ken Brock. From Anderson County Sheriff's Office, retired. He said, I came to chew bubble gum and make fun of Robbie. And I'm like, well, then Doc starts. So I'm like, and it was like 4 that Doc got me. And I look at Doc and I went 4, and look at Ken. I'm like 1. I said, Ken, you're falling behind. I said, Doc's got you 4-1. So that's the dynamic we had all day in class today.
I wish I'd have been there. That would have been so fun.
It was,
and
we got
to get all of us together, and we'll keep DA out of this because his back is questionable. But we need to Molly tab either Ken or Doc to you, and the other one to me, and get a group photo with them, like Papoose to us, with a Molly rig.
Me and Doc found Bigfoot last night, didn't we, DA?
Yep.
We sent DA a picture of it.
Yep. It was Jack Links.
Mm-hmm. We went to the gas station, and there he be.
So they sent me a picture of them like posing by it.
What? So,
that's amazing.
So yeah, I've got to hang out with Doc the past couple of days. Got to hang out with Ken today because obviously I went up there Friday and hung out with Doc for a while, and then was in class with him all day today with him and Ken, and then we got class tomorrow. And I think Doc's going down to Ken's house to work on his blade on Monday, and he's leaving on Tuesday. So we've had a good time. Like I said at the start of the show, if you're on the fence or if you're thinking about the class, it's worth it. It's worth every penny of that. If you want to learn this stuff, if you feel like this is something, and it's not that you feel like this is something everybody needs. I mean, it's because the life you save could be your own, could be one of your loved ones. I mean, and Doc is so passionate about this I mean, I've known Doc for over a year now, and I know from sitting here watching him that he's passionate about it, but that's nothing compared to seeing him in his element in that class teaching.
Well, and there's something y'all need to remember too. In addition to jokingly calling DA the Ozark Stephen King, one thing you always see pop up with the reviews if you go on to Amazon, it's like the dude does his research. The dude does his research. If he mentions a town or he mentions a restaurant, it's going to be where you think it is, with the exception of Steve's Pub and Grub that is completely fictional. Don't go to Fort Leonard Wood. But
apparently they're getting a little tired of that at the South Gate.
The reason I say that is there's a reason that Dark Angel kits are used by the Wild Hunt. There's a reason that Brock's blades and Scallywag tactical blades are being used by the Wild Hunt, because these guys have an unlimited black budget and they're using the best. And DA does his research. And as Robbie would say in his Forest voice, that's all I got to say about that.
That's all I got to say about that.
And the other night, I read part of the prologue of the new work of Dark Frontiers, Cry of the Wendigo. I read part of that. The entire prologue will be up tonight or tomorrow on the Patreon for those of you who are members over there. So definitely check that out. It'll be up. Like I said, it'll be up either tonight or tomorrow. I'm 8,500 words into the manuscript already, and it's growing quickly.
It's already the best.
Sid the Sloth appears. Steve's read it. Robbie, have you had a chance to read it yet?
I got about 3 pages past where you read the other night, and Ken pulled up this morning, and I got out, and I hadn't had. Obviously, we've been drinking out of a fire hose all day, so I hadn't had a chance to finish. So as soon as I'm done here, I'm gonna go finish it before I go to bed.
Steve liked it.
I did.
Well,
I did.
Obviously, I like what you read the other night, and the couple pages that I got past where you read were awesome. So I don't know how many more pages there are past that, but
I got to read about 35 pages today. Total.
Okay, then.
I
probably about 20-ish pages to go.
And on a personal note, I appreciate the shameless plugs that Toom and the other moderators were giving me about my my little Facebook endeavor, or YouTube endeavor rather. If you haven't figured it out, as a fan of the show for the last couple of years, I ain't right, and
none of us are.
I love what I do for a living. I think being in healthcare is so rewarding, and every night, or I should say, every night something happens, and every morning I come home with one of those "y'all ain't gonna believe this shit" stories. And I decided that I didn't want these to be lost if something happened to me. So I started up a little channel called the Inebriate Merce, where I spend in 5 minutes or less telling some kind of a funny story or odd story, or probably something you shouldn't repeat, that happened in the healthcare world. And I'm sure it's because of the love of this channel, but some the feedback's been pretty positive. And if I can make somebody laugh at my expense, it's worth every bit of it. And I appreciate y'all being so supportive of that.
Hell, I made Doc and Ken laugh at my expense all day today.
If you can't laugh at yourself, then what's the point, man?
Exactly.
I lost all my self-respect.
Apparently, it's pretty easy because they laughed at me all day, so I just joined in the fun and laughed myself too.
And that's the humor I do my best to capture in the books too.
Yep. And and we joke and kid around, and there was a guy that was in class today, and when we was getting ready to break for lunch, Doc had to go to the bathroom, so me and Kim were standing there talking. This guy comes over and says, "So how long y'all known each other?" And Kim's like, "Well, this is actually the first time I ever got to see Doc in person." I said, "Yeah, mine too." He said, "Well, how long y'all known each other?" Kim's like, "A couple months, like maybe 6 months, I think is how long." And he looked at me, I said, "A little over a year." He said, "I would have never thought that y'all weren't just like long." I'm like, that's what everybody says about our entire group. It's just we've got that dynamic. We just click. That. It's just. I don't know how to explain it, or as Doc was saying all day, I don't know how to explain it, but it just happens.
We have that. We all have that same level of weirdness.
Same gallows sense of humor.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there laughing at some of the stuff Margolin says. I'm like, that's like one of my coworkers. I'm like, we ain't right. You know.
Margolin's fun to write because sometimes even I'm shocked at what comes out of his mouth.
And
Yeah.
you don't have to imagine what the conversation will. If you're here when Doc's on the show and I'm on the show and Ken's in the chat, you've heard the gist of the conversation we had today. Same.
Well,
Us
it's
busting
funny.
on each other's balls. That's about it.
Last Saturday we were giving Doc shit about every time we popped open the cork, he would pull his head on the camera. Di and I were talking before the show. I was able to acquire a very expensive bottle of scotch for a very reasonable price a couple of years ago. If I were to sell it sealed today, I could get like $1,000 for it. Well, I opened it the other day, and I was kind of disappointed that Doc didn't show up going as soon as I opened the top of it because I was half expecting it. Oh, Kenai's trying to get in. Come here, buddy.
Meeting time.
Somebody wanted Kenai. I guess he heard it. His public reaching out to him.
Hey,
There you go,
Kenai.
Kate. Yeah. Did you miss the meeting, Kenai? Okay.
Well, folks, some of the reasons that we choose the affiliates we do is because they're all veteran-owned or first responder-owned companies, and we're very proud to support our veterans and our first responders here at DA Ex Machina. It's something we'll always do. Hell, every one of us are veterans or first responders of some capacity, and you know, I wouldn't change that for the world. I love these guys because we've all been at some point in our life written a check for up to and including our lives. And that transcends just veteran status. That's law enforcement, any first responder, really. You don't know, you go to work, it could be the last day because things happen and sometimes things go sideways in a hurry. So we're very proud to support our first responders because we've been there, we understand it, and we've got nothing but love for our brothers and sisters in uniform. Which brings me to the 22 a day foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. So if you're looking for a charity, the Till Valhalla Project or the 22 a day foundation are the two I would strongly recommend, because 95% of the money goes right into the veterans. It's service dogs, helps buy artificial limbs. It really does go to the veterans, whereas some of these big charities, you're lucky if a nickel out of every dollar actually gets to the veterans. Most of it goes to salaries. So we're very conscious of making sure that what we're doing gets to the right people. So check on your veterans and first responder friends. We lose first responders all the time to suicide. We lose veterans to suicide, and it is a horrible, horrible thing, especially when you think that you're facing these demons alone. We've all been there. We've all stood on that precipice, and we're here if you guys need us. And Griff said it right. Do a buddy check, because you never know when that text that you send somebody, even if it's a, "Hey, dumbass, what are you doing? Are you okay? Want to go get a beer?" That might be what keeps them off the edge. Just let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care about them and you're thinking about them. And any of you who are served in a uniform knows that what I was saying. Hey, when I say "Hey, dumbass," that's just how we talk to one another. I've said that
That's
in
the
words
censored
to
version.
Robbie. Yeah, that's the censored version. But we're we get it. And
Yeah. Anybody in
Yeah,
this line of work has fought the shadows, and you're always trying to keep the shadows in the corners, and sometimes the shadows start to creep out. And it's amazing how sometimes your good friends know what's going on, and like you said, Dia, that at 3 a.m. "You okay, fucker?" Text makes a big difference. And I fought that recently myself, and it was pretty nice to hear this asshole text out to me to make sure I was okay, and Robbie did too.
well, we try to stay in contact with one another because we've all had a lot of crap go on this year. So, but hopefully 2024 be better because 2023 is winding up. We got 2 months to go, just under 2 months. So here's hoping 2024 is better for all of us. We're gonna end our show with a toast like we've been doing here lately. And I'm very proud of the toast, and it's a tradition I want to keep. I'm going to close with a line from The Parting Glass, old Irish drinking song. When you read between the lines and see what the song's talking about, it's lifting a glass for those who can't lift it anymore, for those that we've lost along the way. And that list is long, and it will continue to grow longer. That's just the way of life. But we can do our best to save the ones we can. So, in that vein, in that spirit, we're gonna close it out with a toast. And just bear in mind, this goes out to the ones that we can't reach anymore, the ones we've lost. And the toast goes like this: But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.